I'm Dr. Manjua Padare, and this is The Scented Edge. My passion for these conversations comes from my own journey. This podcast is an effort to translate that lived experience into something meaningful and positive. Now, let's get into the episode. So let's begin. I'm Dr. Manjua Padare, and this is The Scented Edge. Today we have Marco Winter, CEO or Chief Executive of MDBC. So I'll let you tell me what you do and what MDBC is.
Thank you, Manju. Thank you for the invitation to be here today on the show. First of all, MDBC stands for Malaysian Dutch Business Council. And yes, my official title is Executive Director. We are a bilateral chamber of commerce, founded to initially support Dutch companies that are operational or want to be operational in Malaysia. Help them set up here, especially when they are SMEs. The bigger companies, we also support with networking, with some business development, and so with a bit of representation towards the Malaysian authorities. We try to be stronger and stronger, represent the Netherlands' business interests in Malaysia, open more doors for our member companies, and of course at times also give input to the authorities and have discussions with them on doing business in Malaysia to try to make the work environment here as favorable as possible.
I've always considered you the CEO because of the vast experience and knowledge that you have. Tell us how long you've been in Malaysia and where does it feel home to you now? Is it back in Netherlands? Is it in Malaysia?
Well, I came here in 1993, initially for 1 year, and I'm still here. So that means a lot. This has become home over time. My children have grown up here. 13 years I did all kinds of work which got me involved in the community, and the Malaysian Dutch Business Council work has been since 2003. This feels like home. I think the larger part of my life has been here. Seeing your children grow up here, being involved in other communities as well, heavily involved in business, including working with the Malaysian government. This feels more like home. I am back in the Netherlands maybe 2-3 times a year. A bit on the personal side, but mainly initiated by work reasons. Then, of course, combined with a bit of personal time. But usually after about 2 weeks in the Netherlands, I'm like, I want to go back home. And as most people tell me by now, I'm Malaysian. This is not my second home, but my first home.
What do you see is the key differences between how it is in Netherlands and how it is living in Malaysia?
The main difference that people are always talking about is, besides the tall people in the Netherlands, is usually the directness of the Dutch. Contrary to Asian culture, we want to save face, we want to be polite, there's protocol, while the Dutch are quite direct in everything. They don't mean it badly, but they just want to come to business. So that's one of the main items that we have to tell Dutch companies. Malaysia has established rules and regulations, partly from the British time, but it's all a bit more flexible here. It's how do you work within the system? And that's a lot more possible in Malaysia than it would be in the Netherlands.
So tell me, what do you think are the key problems that MDBC helps to solve?
Well, first of all, there's the companies that are new to the market that are planning to set up shop here. They need soft landing. On one hand, they need the link with the authorities, whether it's MIDA or sometimes MDAC, in case it has to do with digital investments. But in principle, each foreign company would need to get a permit to operate in Malaysia. They want to discuss maybe certain incentives to operate here, to invest here. So that's one side of our work. The other part is to make sure that they are really immediately in contact with what we call service providers. Any company that sets up in Malaysia, what do they need? They would need a company secretary to register their company, to make everything legal. They would probably be looking for services related to tax, audit, legal, payroll. They need to find personal accommodation as well as their office location, whether it's a factory or whether it's an office. So they need property and real estate support. They would ultimately need to set up their office. They will need a bank account, etc. So that whole set of service providers is something that we provide within our membership community. So that's for incoming companies. Then, of course, companies that have been established here, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, or in some cases more than 50 years, they would still need open doors. Government is also evolving. People are changing. Sometimes they want to discuss new investments. Sometimes they want to discuss issues of doing business. Where do they go? In our case, it's mainly dealing with the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, MIDA, Matrade, MDEC. Of course, on human resource side and visa for employment is Talent Corp, MISO. We continue to have to work with these relevant government agencies to make sure that our members have access to them and get their questions answered.
And how long have you been with MDBC?
2003.
Wow.
So approaching 23 years.
That shows, like I said, every time I talk to you, I see the depth of knowledge that you bring. Now, tell us a little bit about which Dutch sectors that you feel are gaining commercial traction in Malaysia.
All right, maybe we can take a step back first. Historically, the Dutch have been strong in Malaysia with regard to fast-moving consumer goods. Of course, best-known brands would be Dutch Lady, Heineken, Unilever. Logistics has been big in the past, banking, financial side as well. But of course, over time, not only are some multinationals taken over by other companies, other nationalities, but expertise also changes. Dutch are well known for water expertise. That's an area where the Malaysians are always interested in, whether it has to do with flood management, coastal protection, drinking water, etc. Dutch are well received when it comes to agri-tech, of course, as being one of the most important countries in the world with regard to agriculture, now turning into agri-tech. There's always a demand for Malaysia to become self-sufficient and then see how far we can take it here as well. So there's some very good examples in Malaysia of Dutch companies working in the agri-tech field. The last couple of years, what we see as well is delegations in health and life science. Look at opportunities, look at Malaysian demand. We are looking at ports management, could be airports, could also definitely be maritime ports. There's a lot of Dutch expertise in construction. We're also dealing with, for example, dredging in those areas, what is required to get more land in order to build airports or maritime ports. Defense and security. There's been a very program going on from the Netherlands to Malaysia the last 5 years on defense and security cooperation, especially related to maritime. But what's definitely hot at this moment would be semiconductor sector or so-called advanced manufacturing. That has been initiated about 2 years ago. There's high intensity. Malaysian authorities are very much involved in this. This is an area where Malaysia has built up its own ecosystem over the past 50 years, being the so-called Silicon Valley of the East. But Malaysia also needs to step up, also wants to bring that sector to a higher level. In the Netherlands, you have this world-famous company called ASML, which has an incredible supply chain, mainly located in an area called Brainport in the Netherlands, which is an area which has the highest concentration of intellectual property in Europe. So over the past few years, there's been more and more cooperation between Malaysia and the Netherlands. We've had just last week the 4th mission from the Netherlands to Malaysia in the last 2 years, with another 10 companies that are either rapidly expanding in Malaysia or are new and will be setting up in the next few months. Semiconductor mission from Malaysia to the Netherlands, organized by the Malaysian Semiconductor Industry Association. That was quite a success, also visiting Brainport. This past year, a lot of Malaysian investment agencies and state governments have been to the Netherlands. I was there myself with the Chief Minister of Selangor and a delegation. So there's a lot of interest to attract more companies in the semicon sector to really build up this sector in Malaysia as well and play a more important role based on geopolitical circumstances and the importance to build or sometimes rebuild supply chains.
You work very closely with regulatory bodies, with governments, with businesses. So in your experience, there are many things that companies need to consider, like partnership, localization, pricing. Where do you see the challenges that exist for the Dutch companies in Malaysia, and what would be the opportunities? What would be a good thing and what are things that need to be improved?
I think what's important is that regulations are consistent, that it's workable. Of course, even better if it's attractive. There are no sudden changes. You cannot invite foreign investors here based on certain regulations and then suddenly start changing those. That causes a lot of unrest in the market, might cost companies a lot of money, might make them consider to move away from Malaysia if they can find better opportunities in other countries. So I think a few times what we have seen is that regulations are being changed without discussions first. That is definitely something that as a group of bilateral chambers try to work with government, especially when there's a new government, to discuss with us if possible any plan to change the regulations. Let's discuss it first, see what might be the consequences of that.
So those are the things that could use improvement. What are some of the strengths that you see in the Malaysian infrastructure that could help Dutch companies?
It's partly the infrastructure itself, the whole environment in Malaysia that we've seen as advantages. Firstly, I think ASEAN has a lot of potential versus China, versus India. This is the growth market in the world. We can see that clearly also in the Netherlands. There's a lot of interest in ASEAN at this moment. What does Malaysia have to offer compared to the other countries? It's very interesting because relatively to Vietnam, to Indonesia, also to Thailand, the Philippines, Malaysia has the lowest number of population. It's relatively small. But for a lot of companies, the home market is not that important. They just look for good facilities. And in that sense, Malaysia has more to offer than any other country in this region. When a company is doing their due diligence on where they want to go, they have their own matrix, what's important to them, cost of living, cost of doing business, talent, logistics, of course, language spoken. Often Malaysia might not be on number one, but most of the time Malaysia will be number two. And in the end of the day, when you look at your whole matrix, Malaysia will be number one. And I found out that that's often a shock to companies because Malaysia is not that well known, especially for the Dutch compared to Indonesia, compared to Singapore or Thailand. And then they start realizing that, hey, this is actually a fantastic country, stability, but also it's manageable here. On top of that, Malaysia has a lot of free trade agreements. Our opportunities not just within ASEAN, but it goes way beyond ASEAN to China, to India, to the Asia Pacific. But now with the latest free trade agreements, it just continues globally. And very important to make use of the different races, religions, languages, cultures, etc. With a population of 30 million, you can actually have a hinterland of more than 3 billion people. And that's amazing. That makes this country truly unique. Of course, there's the Malaysians, there's the Chinese, there's the Indians, and it makes it so much easier to set up your company when you have those opportunities here all together in one country. There used to be this advertising campaign, Malaysia Truly Asia. We were all very proud of that campaign. I actually happen to know the people who made it, and that's something to really be proud of. And I know people in surrounding countries were very angry about that advertising campaign. But true, from Malaysia, also for business. It's not just for vacationing, for tourism, but also for business. Malaysia is truly Asia, and you can achieve so much.
Definitely can see you are a very proud Malaysian. Dutch companies are very heavy on sustainability and ESG, and you yourself have talked about it quite often. Where do you see the Dutch companies can contribute and help Malaysia build on this?
There's indeed a lot of expertise in the Netherlands. I think one of the first countries that came up with topics related to ESG, when it was still called CSR or just sustainability, the topics related to maintaining your country. And the Dutch needed to be very strong in water and in agriculture. Small country, needed to be protected from the water. Small country that happened to be very good in anything related to agriculture. So that's where that expertise was built up. And over time, that has continued many areas, many topics of ESG. And what we see is that the Dutch companies bring that knowledge to Malaysia. Maybe in the Netherlands they are at this level, at this high level, but then in Malaysia they start at a lower level, but they slowly work it up because they know that within the global environment, they will need to be at that level. They cannot do less in Malaysia compared to maybe what they do in the Netherlands or in America. They will build up their factories here and their supply chain knowledge to that same level. And anything related to circular economy, recycling, etc. I think that the Dutch have come up with fantastic programs related to palm oil, where there's great cooperation with Malaysia with regard to water, sustainability. So that concept of circular economy is very deeply ingrained in Dutch society, Dutch economy, and that in a way transferred to other countries as well.
Do you think the application of sustainability and ESG standards on countries in this region where they are more focused on economic development, do you think it's something that should be integrated into the economy at this stage itself, or it's something that countries can afford to give more emphasis to growth rather than sustainability and ESG? How do you see it fitting into the national growth?
I hope balanced growth can be achieved. I know living here in this part of the world, it's not fair by some of the Western countries to expect and demand the same level of sustainability in these countries that are still developing. And you need to achieve a certain level of development before you can also invest in ESG, but anything that can be learned along the way, learn from the mistakes that were made in the West and try to see if you can indeed balance that within the growth here in this country. We are talking about palm oil being a very important sector where the Netherlands has been very much advocating. In Malaysia, we're one of the only countries in the EU that is in favor of palm oil and has tried to educate other parties as well. So there are opportunities to work together. While Malaysia is playing its part with regard to certification, the Dutch are trying to do the same as well by starting the RSPO and all kinds of other organizations to try to assist in balancing that growth. So yeah, we cannot always demand exactly the same level immediately, but as long as it's very clear that steps are being taken to go in that direction, I think that would be very positive. And of course, one thing that MITI has done a couple of years ago is come up with their own ESG guidelines, and that will also be put forward to incoming investors. And MIDA has also made it very clear that we cannot give any incentives if companies do not stick to our ESG principles. And I think those are very important developments that will already make it clear where you stand as a country. So all compliments to making those steps.
There is, however, no global ESG standard that countries across the globe can rely on. So how do we reconcile the different ESG metrics and the different reporting even within the ASEAN region?
Yeah, that's definitely a very difficult question. In general, what I do know is that certain steps are being taken in Malaysia to assist SMEs to come up with some form of ESG reporting to keep it as simple as possible for them, because they will see it as a burden and not really as an investment. And of course, that mind shift has to take place, but they need assistance for that. So it's good that these steps are being taken. It can come from Bursa, it can come from banks. There's a lot of parties involved, also financial organizations that are involved in trying to assist SMEs to improve on their ESG reporting and to come up with some kind of standard. So whether they need to do reporting to their stakeholders or to Bursa or to a bank or to a potential investor, that is available in quite a straightforward format. If that will help on a global scale in Europe, what's happening is that the new EU guideline on responsible business conduct, RBC, that will make it mandatory for any company that wants to operate in the EU, whether they are headquartered in the EU or based anywhere else in the world. If you want to do business in the EU, you stick to the RBC rules, including your whole supply chain. So you are responsible for whatever happens in your supply chain. So the multinationals are also helping SMEs to improve on their ESG reporting. And the multinationals themselves need to show this to their consumers, to their stakeholders, to their financial authorities. That's definitely, again, we're working on this also together with the Netherlands Embassy to make sure that our members here are aware of that. Because many, of course, started manufacturing in Malaysia with their own supply chain, where some companies might not have taken those steps before because it was never needed. And now if those Malaysian companies want to continue to be a supplier for products and companies that are operational in Europe, then everybody needs to comply.
In your experience with dealing with business for so long, aside from sustainability, what do you see are the biggest trends that will be coming out that will be impacting businesses?
How our people are dealing with the sustainability matters will be important. Can it be kept at a level where it's not overly burdened, where it's not too expensive for a lot of SMEs, but also smallholders in certain sectors related to palm oil, timber, agri-tech, etc. Besides that, we're always worried about overregulation, where that will make it too difficult for entrepreneurship, innovation, development. Of course, developments in certain sectors can go so fast that the authorities are lagging behind. And once they start lagging behind and they lack the knowledge, that will mean that they cannot keep up with the rules and regulations, and entrepreneurship is stifled. So that will be a very difficult scenario. How artificial intelligence is going to impact the world, I've probably reached an age that I'm not enough aware of everything. You're talking to a guy who hasn't even used ChatGPT yet. So, okay, we'll try to keep it simple, but it will definitely impact more and more business. I can see it around me. Yeah, we have to step in organizing our own activities, our own events on this topic to make sure that the companies stay aware of things that are happening.
You're actually the youngest older person I know, and we will come to why that is the case. But as we approach the end of the year, and this will come out in 2026, what are the big plans that MDBC has? What are you guys looking forward to?
Well, we realized our 30th anniversary is being celebrated in 2026. The 25th anniversary was interrupted by COVID, so this becomes a bit more of an important year for us. We are looking into multiple events, and not just our regular events calendar, but we've noticed that two of the areas that require constant attention that the members are asking for is events related to human resources and also anything related to digital. But there's so many developments and companies really have to keep up with anything that's happening on automation and AI. So we'll be focusing on a few events there. We're also discussing at this moment with the board of directors and the embassy on a special event highlighting years of cooperation, a good bilateral relationship between Malaysia and the Netherlands, and 30 years MDBC, where we've grown substantially over the years. And with all the sectors that are of importance in the bilateral relationship right now, we should be able to organize quite an interesting event showcasing what's happening here in Malaysia, how the Malaysians experience Dutch products every day. I mean, you can really spend your whole day experiencing Dutch products. And a lot of people don't know this, but from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to bed, you can completely be engaging with Dutch brands.
This podcast is supported by Work. More than just a co-working space, it's an ecosystem built for human connection. So whether you're established or you're a startup, find room to grow at Work. The MDBC office is one of the more beautiful offices that I've seen.
Thank you.
Everything in your office is completely Dutch. Even the decor, the colors, everything is Dutch. Coming back to you being the youngest older person that I know, tennis is a very, very large part of your life. Your tennis champion status, I know, gives you a lot of endurance, a lot of stamina. Why this passion for tennis?
I think in general, I grew up with a passion for sports. Both my parents were very much involved in sports. They met on the sports field as well, played everything together. My dad was involved in anything related to his balls, especially cricket, baseball. My mom was into athletics and then later also tennis and cricket. I was born literally next to the sports field. From very young, I was constantly visiting with my parents sports facilities. When I turned 8, I was already playing football. I was playing tennis competitively. Grew up on the sports field myself. Actually, I was always there during the weekends and as much as possible during the week as well. Got into special selections, both in football and in tennis. Had to make a choice when I was 16 because I just couldn't continue with both. I failed my 4th grade in high school because of too much sports. So I had to make a choice there, continued with tennis. It's really indeed been a substantial part of my life in the Netherlands first, but also had a tennis scholarship in America. So I played college, university tennis for a number of years, traveling all over the country, played national championships in America for my university, became All-American a few times. But still, thanks to a bit of my Dutch educational background, even became the scholar athlete of the university. And it just continued, even when I came to Malaysia. It's definitely still part of my life, part of a few tennis communities here in Malaysia with our teams. We travel the country for tournaments, play competitively. I can still play maybe 4 times a week. Do some other sports as well to keep it balanced.
What is the most recent championship that you won?
Oh, good question. Sandakan. And before that, Kuching, and won something in Kuantan. KL Open, won the doubles, not the singles, lost to an Indonesian. Yeah, so really traveling the country for tennis.
Long list of championships.
Yes. And then because even at our level, and that's the nice thing in Malaysia, there's more and more tournaments, so-called masters, seniors, veterans. So they have different age groups. They have different combined age groups as well. So there's always an opportunity to play and be competitive.
But you've actually won against people who are much younger than you as well. So I wouldn't really put you in the senior category. Tell me a little bit about where leadership and sports meet. Where has your power on the tennis court influenced your leadership?
Tennis is, of course, partly an individual sport. You grow up playing singles and maybe doubles. You do become part of a team to play team tennis, some kind of leagues, etc. So in a way, you already have to be a leader alone on the tennis court and mark your territory in a way, show that you are on top of your opponent. That's, I think, where the leadership comes in for yourself, but also can you be a leader for your team? I know that I can be still a better player, interestingly enough, at my age. But what I'm trying to avoid is, of course, to go down with my level. So I'm practicing very hard because it's very frustrating after a bunch of injuries every time to have to come back and try to reach the level that I'm used to. So it can at times be very frustrating. So I must admit, I don't always have the best temper on the court because I know that for my own standards, I'm lacking. And that's frustrating. I know that part of my wins and the championships have come because I can show that I'm a leader and I got a winning attitude on the court. I will not give any points for free. You win a point, good for you. See if you can win more points to win a game, good for you. If you win more games and maybe win a set, good for you, but you still have not won the whole match. That attitude. And I think a lot of players locally have not been used to that mentality on the other side of the net. There's often complaints here, the weather and this and that. When people tell me it's hot, yeah, it's hot, but I go out, even it's 11 o'clock or 2 o'clock. I just face the ball and the opponent and not the weather. If you already give in to things like that, where are you going to be? Then you might as well be a social player or just be a 5 o'clock or evening player. And that's not what I want yet. So I just keep going. And in a way, that kind of leadership, that kind of attitude, you also have to show when you are working, when you're dealing sometimes with the government, when you're dealing with companies, when you're dealing with your own team. So yeah, that discipline, of course, practicing all the time, balancing it with other forms of exercise, stretching, yoga, gym, of course. That balance is very important. And in a way, you have to find that balance with work life as well and within work, because even just within your job, There's a lot of different environments that we have to deal with. We have to deal with corporate, we have to deal with government, with diplomatic, other stakeholders. Everybody is important. And you have to somehow balance that work element as well.
Your leadership, of course, has garnered a lot of respect from up-and-coming leaders. What advice would you give them? What strengths do they need to build on?
Interesting question. I would say always be open for what you can learn every day, what you can experience every day. My work every day is different. So even after 22, 23 years, it's still interesting. It still makes me want to go to the office every day. And if you have that attitude, I think that's already a very important element. So learn from your surrounding, be grateful with what you're getting to hear, to experience. All these companies, all these diplomats, all these government officials, from everybody you can learn something. My attitude is also, it doesn't matter who is on the other side of the table, treat them with respect. Maybe sometimes they're above your level, maybe sometimes they're below your level. It doesn't matter because you're sitting here together and you need to get a job done. So let's make sure that it happens. And if you've been given the task, I don't mind working with you. Just do the job and we'll do our job as well. And together we make great things happening. Be disciplined. And that's definitely important. Be committed. Yeah. We organize a lot of events. You got to meet details as well. It's all in the finer details. You cannot let go. You cannot slack. If you start doing that, you start making mistakes. You become a bit lazy, and before you know it, your events are not at the level that people are used to or that you want to present. Yeah, you also have to make sure that all your guests are being treated properly and fairly. So I think, does that give you enough input?
Yes, a lot that leaders can take away from that. So that's for leadership. Now, for those who aspire to be as young, as energetic as you on the tennis court, any sports advice, nutrition advice, sleep advice?
Oh my God, I barely sleep 6 hours a night. That's bad. And I know every night I feel guilty about that again, or every morning. Be disciplined. I know that some people are really looking at me at tournaments. I always do stretching. And sometimes there's 2 or even 3 matches on a day. And before the second match, I start stretching again. And people are like, but you already played. Yeah, but that was hours ago. And this is a new match. In the meantime, you sit down, you cool off, you eat something, you drink something. I need to stretch again. I need to protect my body. That's also based on experience. I've had too many injuries that take me out for 2, 3, 4 months, 5 months even. And you have to come back again. So I rather do this to prevent injuries, but also to feel better for myself, to already mentally prepare for the next match. So that's very important in keeping going. I prepare mentally. I get my stuff together. What am I going to wear today? Check my rackets, do my stretching, prepare my food, not just what I eat in the morning, but also for later. In Malaysia, sometimes it's not easy, especially when I play for a local team. They just get noodles for everybody. I don't eat noodles when I'm on the tennis court, guys. I need my breast. So, yeah, that's sometimes funny when I play for the local teams. I make sure I got my own food, my bananas and other stuff, enough to drink. Always be prepared. Don't count on others. Don't expect it from others. Just make sure that you know what you need and you make sure that's as part of your preparations. You got it. Yeah, and I will still be nervous for any match. I've played thousands of matches in my life, but any match I will still be a bit nervous. And that's good. When you start doing the warm-up and you try to hit through that and really focus on your warm-up, make sure that you go through it properly and get ready for that first point. And from that moment on, nothing is given away. There's any criticism sometimes from my friends. Oh, why don't you give him a game? It's not a matter of giving. If they earn it, it's fine. But if they don't win it, yeah, what can I do?
But that's part of integrity as well, right?
Well, in work sometimes I meet people and I introduce myself. Yeah, I know you once trashed me on the tennis court. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't remember. They remember, but I don't. So
And then how do
I
you
feel bad about that, but I play so many matches during the year and over the years. And then, of course, especially when it's an easy win, you might not remember your opponents. So, yeah, when there's tougher matches or you lose occasionally, then most probably you will remember those people, but not all the others. I apologize to all the listeners of your podcast that I once stressed, but next time I might do it again.
we pull you back into MDBC to keep you away from the tennis court? What is the message you have for companies to connect with MDBC in 2026? Do they have to be Dutch companies?
No, they don't necessarily have to be Dutch companies. Of course, we hope to get all Dutch companies in. Together we stand strong and we want to represent the Dutch business interest in Malaysia. But for us, it's also important to build that whole business support structure, the ecosystem, the soft landing, whatever you want to call it. So we are open for Malaysian service providers in those segments that I mentioned, company secretary, tax audit, legal, properties, things like that. Not too many, because it's good to be able to be selective. But we could also be open for Malaysian companies that either invest in the Netherlands or trade with the Netherlands, trade with Europe via the Netherlands, especially via Rotterdam, of course. We love to bring in more Malaysian companies that are an agent for a Dutch brand or a Dutch company here in Malaysia. There's many of them as well, of course. So that whole community can still be stronger. There is business development opportunities within that community. And we always invite companies to be a part of that, but then also to think, how can you play a role in it? Not just what can you get out of it, but also what can you put in? How do you present yourself? What kind of events do you attend? Who's going to attend those events? But what can you contribute? Yeah, is there some information that you have that is certain knowledge that is important to share? Can you be a speaker? Can you be a host? Can you be a sponsor? So make it more of an active involvement. And that's very important. Sometimes after a year, company wants to quit their membership, and then how come you never participated? Yeah, no time. Yeah, okay, so there's no time. That's up to you. But yeah, you invest in the membership. Make sure that a couple of people within the company are interested to attend events. Make sure that revenue comes out of it. Not just the information, but also the networking, of course. It always comes down to the networking. Present yourself, make sure others get to know you. We cannot always do that for you. We cannot always sit in your business development chair. You got to be part of that yourself. And then it's a bit easier for us to help you as well.
I mean, what you get out of it, be what you put into it as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And now, what will make you happy? The final question I asked. Oh my gosh. If you had one wish to make the planet better, what would it be?
Yeah. Guys, let's be smart. We're all on the same bloody planet. And there's too much fire going on all over the place. We can do better. But don't ask me how to do better. But we all try to play our own role. As Michael Jackson once said, let's look in the mirror. A bit more common sense, which is not that common. And a little bit less aggression, please.
Well, thank you, Marco, for being on the podcast today.
My pleasure, Roger. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, thank you for joining me at The Edge. Now, the stories and opinions shared by my guests are theirs alone. They are raw, personal, and do not necessarily reflect my own views or professional stance. I present these dialogues as lived realities, not absolute truth. It's for you to examine, challenge, and interpret. Like any investigation into the human condition, the evidence is laid bare. What you take away from it is entirely up to you. Once again, this podcast is supported by Work. Work is not just a co-working space, it's an ecosystem built for human connection. So whether you're an established entity or a startup, find space to grow at work. Okay, be sure to turn on the notification bell icon for this podcast. And here's a surprise. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. And if you do all four, there's a mystery gift potentially waiting for you. I'm Dr. Manjua Padure. Until the next time, stay centered, but keep your edge.